Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Adobe Acrobat Studio, your team's home base. Collaborate within a shared PDF space. You've got your docs, your plans, your specs, and then invite the crew to build what's next. To talk up the teamwork. Here's an updated render. They think that this design could be a contender. And when somebody wonders what's the next step, AI helps you finish the rest. Bolts are tight, now your plan's refined. Run a smoother business when you're all aligned. Do that with Acrobat. Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like me, Ruby Walsh from Racing TV's Road to Cheltenham show, as we look forward to 4 brilliant days of jump racing at the Cheltenham Festival. Search Racing TV and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the podcast, and we're at that point where we are right in the middle of looking back at our fantastic victory over Leeds United, where even the TNT commentator said where you can find the best coverage on Sunderland AFC. And we're also looking ahead to a glamorous FA Cup 5th round tie at Port Vale, who eventually and maybe surprisingly knocked out Bristol City around an hour after our game had finished. So we thought, what better time to ask you lovely people to send us your questions, and then we can get our knowledgeable guests to try and answer them. Unfortunately for us, they weren't available, so we had to pull a couple of others in. And first up, we have Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
What a great way to start that, Chris. You know, just get a dig in. I actually think there's been a misunderstanding. I didn't know we were doing questions and answers. I thought we were doing a 2-hour tribute on Jan Paveda following his transfer out of the club. It needs to be covered in depth, this, and his fine service remembered, I think.
Well, you see, you might be jumping the gun there, mate, because we may well do a news roundup later on in the week where that might be covered. It may or may not, but let's just say Colombia may not be the best place for him to push on with it professionally. Or push on with
Chris, what I'll say is I'll keep my powder dry. How about that? That's I'm quite pleased with that one.
You had that one lined up, didn't you? You set us up there, but but you can tell by the
lined up. Didn't you?
I'd like to think I meant it, but I didn't. But Andrew, you can tell by the tone already. You know that we're still chuffed, aren't we, after that win?
Oh, definitely. Buzzing about not only the performance, but I'm really looking forward to the weekend now. You know, you can be fairly confident the team will be preparing for it well. I'm not saying we'll definitely win, but it doesn't. I'm not scared of a cup upset. I think we're going to approach it really well, and I can't wait to take on Port Vale. I just think we're in a great position at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic win over Leeds. And you heard in the background there, we also have someone else with us today. And if you listen to our preview pod, thankfully, this person survived his infiltration into the home end at Elland Road, because to tell us the tale, we have Jonny Hawley. Hello, Jonny.
Hello, gentlemen. Yes, I'm back. I'm safe. I'm in one piece, just about. And I managed to sit on my hands for 90 minutes and change and not react to any of the goings on, which I think was I didn't know I had it in us, put it that way.
Yeah, well done, mate. And Andrew, to be fair, Jonny didn't have to put up with watching it on Leeds TV, did he?
Well, yeah, Jonny was surrounded by Leeds fans and probably still got more neutral coverage than the fans watching in the living rooms.
I've never seen anything like it, Andrew.
We can have a bit of a laugh because we've won. So when Sunderland win, everything's fine and everything's a bit of a joke. But yeah, I think there'd be a few of us who'd be pretty miffed had things not gone our way. They'd had to swallow some of that because it was a bit one-sided, to put it mildly.
I mean, never mind official Leeds TV. It was like watching Leeds fans TV. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. But how was it in that home end, Jonny? I mean, because it sounded like on the TV coverage, of course, they give the referee a bit of stick and everything for some of those decisions. But how was it?
Yeah, no, well, the game of football was a bit stop-start, I think it's fair to say. So wasn't able to necessarily get swept away in free-flowing football all evening. But yeah, I think I must have been in a parallel universe when I entered Elland Road, though, because I've heard obviously all these things about this fantastic, famous atmosphere under the lights and how it's an absolute cauldron and an awful place to go. But just seemed to be sat around a load of quiet, mild-mannered people who, didn't have much to get het up about. And there seemed to be a couple of thousand screaming, wild-eyed Mackhams across from us who were making all the noise. So yeah, not too sure what went wrong there, but it must have been the other Elland Road I went to.
Well, it's interesting to hear that because I mean, God, honestly, I ended up laughing before the game kicked off with the coverage and how many times they said Leeds United under the lights. I mean,
Yeah.
It just got stupid in the end how many times they're talking about that. But look, the stats backed it up, to be fair. Like, they lost once in, I don't know, 50 years by the way they were talking. But, but do you think it was maybe influenced by the fact that it was Sunderland coming to town and not a Man City, not an Arsenal, maybe not a glamour game, and maybe that the players needed to do something to get the fans up for it, with Sunderland being the opposition?
Yeah, I think so, actually. I do think you're right, because what I heard around is more than anything was frustration, because when you're against a team like Sunderland at home, where it's a game that on paper, you're targeting for trying to win that game, I think it's much quicker as a fan base. And we've seen it ourselves this season, haven't we? Like, against Fulham, for example, the atmosphere compared to against Man City at home. Against Man City at home, we were thrilled to just still be in the game and even being able to create half chances. Whereas against Fulham, there's much more of a sense of we should be making the run in here and winning the game. I think Leeds fans maybe fell into that a bit because there was a lot of frustration creeping in and that sense that you just feel from a home crowd where it's not going your way, but you think it should be. And I think that filters through, whereas the best home atmospheres that you see are usually when it's like a backs to the wall performance against a bigger boy where everyone can rally behind it. So I think it suited us massively as the away team. Like, we played that role perfectly of the spoiler, turning up and trying to keep them quiet and then hit them with a sucker punch, which obviously we did in the end and took the result, which is, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I do think, Andrew, it's a subject that we've been touching on from a Sunderland point of view over the last few weeks, actually, that, and I think this happened to Leeds, where when Sunderland fans, turn up to games, and look, don't get us wrong, you look at the West Ham game and everyone said we were the fans were the 12th man on that day, and they were, because it was an occasion. We talked about at the beginning of the season a lot where the club made it an occasion and the fans were up for it. But I think as a fan base as well, we've got to remember that we can be that 12th man, and sometimes when it isn't that glamour tie or it's not a big event like the opening day of the season or something like that, or a bridge opening or whatever it might be, then you've still got to support the lads, because you can really have an impact on the game. Because when the atmosphere is flat, if we play, let's say, a Fulham or a Burnley or whoever it might be, that we can still impact the game.
Without doubt, it stands to reason that if you've got, what was the phrase Jonny used? Was it wild-eyed Mackhams? I think that's what it was. But if you've got 40-odd thousand of them absolutely doing their nut and backing you, that's bound to just put that little bit of extra energy in your muscles. For Leeds fans, I know they have a reputation, and I know what we were told to expect in terms of atmosphere compared to what we got were two very different things. They have always been good at getting into the referee's ear. They dispute decisions, even if it's a clear-cut call and the referee was right to give the opposition the free kick or the call, they build up this kind of the refs against us mentality, and I think it gets into the officials' heads at times. Now, I don't like to see that when it's other clubs, but I sometimes think that could be an element we could bring to the Stadium of Light, where we're almost so passionate and raucous that it makes the referee see things differently. I know VAR changes that, but if we're talking about 50-50 decisions, I mean, there was one where Leeds managed to get a free kick in the first half where their own player tackled their man, and he said to Siddiqui, "Oh, you've given a foul away there, son." And Siddiqui's like, "What are you on about?"
Yeah, he had his head in his hands at that point, didn't he?
Yeah. So the crowd can just give you that little extra couple of percentage, and whilst Leeds wasn't exactly bouncing last night, I do think it has a part to play.
Can I just build off that point with you as well, Andrew? Because actually, I thought this performance at Leeds at Elland Road, and again under the lights, we'll see it again because I think we have to, don't we? I don't think you can say it. I don't think you can say Elland Road without following up saying under the lights, to be honest. But yeah, I thought this was one of the first occasions this season, Andrew, where actually we did a bit of that getting around the referee. I mean, I thought Ballard did it a lot, and then when Xhaka came on, I thought it kind of helped us potentially to get the penalty because we surrounded the referee straight away, something we haven't done all season. And Xhaka he would not leave that referee alone until they had a look at it. And I thought that's a good thing that we're starting to do that.
It is a good thing. It's a very fine balance between being streetwise and going too far. I don't want us intimidating referees or crowding around them unnecessarily. But yeah, that penalty, within half a second of the incident happening, there's 3 or 4 of us adamant. And again, it does just put that little slight doubt in the referee's mind so that when he's asked to see it on the screen again, it's set away a little narrative in his head. And I think, yeah, in the Premier League, it's a tough division, and I want Sunderland to do things the right way, but we can't just be naive. We can't just be like a bunch of school kids playing in like a local tournament against the school from down the road. We are going to have to get serious and a bit nasty and stick up for each other. And it means that when you go to these grounds where you might be up against it, it means that the lads are all sticking together and working as a unit, and I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, I wish I was good enough to plan it like this, but it's a perfect segue into our first question, actually, because it's a bit on the game. And I'll put it to you, Jonny, because the first one's from Tom Gray, and he's specifically talking about Luke O'Nien. He asks, has Luke O'Nien done enough to keep his place? He said, and he's followed up by saying he's done well whenever he started. But what do you think about that one?
Well, I mean, he's definitely done himself no harm, has he? You know, he's performed well, picked up man of the match last night, which is testament to him as a player, isn't it? You know, he keeps proving people wrong. Everybody basically was saying this season, you know, stepping up to the Premier League, O'Nien's not going to be up to it. He's never going to be able to get himself into this team. And okay, fair enough, it's taken injuries and people making way ahead of him, but you know, he's got a chance and he's taken it. So I would have no issues if he does keep his place. But what I would say is, and I've kind of banged this drum a few times this season, that is not the calculation that we should be thinking about anymore. It's not a starting, it's not a strongest 11. It's not such and such player has the shirt until they lose it, necessarily. That can be the case, but Lebris has shown how many times this season and last season that he's willing to, you know, make surprise changes to his teams if he feels that there's a certain system or a certain matchup that on any given day is gonna suit us or benefit us in the game. So he'll play O'Nien if he feels like that is the best option on that day for that game. And as I say, O'Nien has now at this point, I think, proven, maybe not beyond all doubt, but proven to most people's satisfaction that if and when he's called upon to go into that team and play football, whether it's in the cup, whether it's in the league, he's clearly at least up to the job. So yeah, I've got no issues if he stays in the team. But equally, if he comes out with the team, it's probably because a better player is available to play. So it's a bit of a win-win for us, really.
Yeah. Well, we've got another one on Luke O'Nien, Andrew. So you can have your say on him. We've got one from Paul Rackstraw. And actually, it might not necessarily be a question, because he said, I just want to ask, how good is Luke O'Nien and how much did he deserve it tonight? Obviously, meaning the Leeds game. He said that's possibly more of a statement, actually, which it might be. But just to put it into context, with Luke O'Nien first start in the Premier League, and his minutes in the Premier League haven't necessarily gone as well as he probably would have liked so far. Speaking specifically about the Man City incident that he had. But to put it in context, his first game in the Premier League, his first start in the Premier League, and you could almost argue, even though he made that position his own once upon a time, it is out of position. He probably hasn't played there for 18 months, maybe even longer. I can't remember the last time I saw Luke O'Nien at right back, but to put him in the Premier League at Elland Road against a team that likes to get down the flanks and put crosses in, he was up against it. But the other point I wanted to make about Luke O'Nien, and again, he's one of my absolute favourite players and favourite people ever to be linked with Sunderland, my time supporting them. But Andrew, he does get on that tightrope, doesn't he? On that level, on that kind of, which side does he land on of shithousery? And when it comes off like against Leeds, it is the best thing ever that you've getting away with it and you've done it. But on nights where he potentially doesn't get away with it, where does he land on that?
Well, Box, when he wrestled their player to the ground, had that ball been closer to them in the first half, we could well be talking about O'Nien having given away a penalty, because he did have his arm round the lad's neck almost. But we got away with it. And like I say, I don't think it warranted any further intervention from VAR, because I think it was a corner. It was where the ball was going was a different part of the area. So yeah, again, there's a fine line between it. And what's his name? Longstaff obviously thought he was the dog's bollocks when he did that thing with the towel, and oh, brilliant! I've got one over Luke O'Nien. Well, no, you haven't, mate, because the last thing you want to do is to kind of switch Luke O'Nien's button into like wind up mode. But the statement, rather than the question from the correspondent who got in touch there, I think it is important to recognise that technically he's a very good player as well. He's not just a comedy character. He's not just a lovable lad who gets a few games as a bit of banter. He's excellent on the ball. He's a really competitive defender. He's an athlete. He's going to have to stay in the team this weekend, because I seem to think Hume is suspended. So this could be the chance for him to get a run in the team. He's another one, like so many, who, yeah, he was technically a right back in the game. But when it was needed, a bit like Trey Hume would do, he could move into the middle a bit more. If we decided we wanted to go 5 at the back with wing backs, he could accommodate that. So there's every chance he'll get more minutes. And one thing I have to really credit him for is his conditioning, because he gets dropped into the team from a position of getting relatively few minutes, and then plays, what's that, 90? How many added minutes were there? He's played over 100 minutes there, and was arguably one of the more energetic players on the pitch.
Yeah, I'm sure at some point the referee thought it was a cup match and he had to play extra time. I was waiting for him to start penalties at one point just to see if Leeds could get something from it. But yeah, just the last word on O'Nien, Jonny, because look, absolutely fantastic performance, and considering how much he's played, just want to talk about that interview after the game where Granit Xhaka and Luke O'Nien were in front of the Sunderland supporters. And Granit Xhaka said a couple of things which I found really interesting. Just not only did he just say how important Luke O'Nien is and how great he is, as we all say, but he says he talks to him often. And, that those two clearly as club captain and O'Nien basically the captain, if you like, and then Xhaka we've got two brilliant kind of statesmen there who run the club essentially. And it's great that those two seem to get along so well and have that respect for each other, doesn't it?
100%. And I think it underscores almost everything that's good about Sunderland at the moment. You've got O'Nien sort of bearing the torch for the Football League leg of the journey. He's obviously been there since League One, since the very first days of League One as well. And he was obviously a big part of driving the atmosphere and the standards and everything behind the scenes in that dressing room over the past, pick a number of years. And then you've got Xhaka, who is essentially the face of Premier League Sunderland in its latest incarnation, and he's picked up that baton from O'Nien and run with it, and they've seamlessly, haven't they, sort of transitioned from the Football League version of Sunderland into the Premier League version of Sunderland. They've maintained those standards, or arguably raised them, and the mentality and everything. And that is only possible when everything behind the scenes is joined up and people are pulling in the same direction, and all those things that sound obvious and sound like the bare minimum basics of a successful football club, of alignment and, communication and people who are able to work together and, bring their own things to the club. We have that in spades, and Xhaka and O'Nien's relationship sums that up. And O'Nien himself, just, how many times have we waxed lyrical about him on this podcast, on the previous podcast, in articles and social media, in person, in the pub? Like, O'Nien is Mr. Sunderland, and that, that performance against Leeds is just yet another rubber stamp on a whole heap of rubber stamps that must be about 10 foot tall now for, O'Nien's legacy. That it's a shame that we won't have him forever, but we won't. And one day he'll be part of the history of the club. And when he is, it'll be moments like this that we look back on and kind of go, that's what made O'Nien special. And thank God we've got him. Nobody else does.
What do you mean he's not going to be here forever? He's going to be a coach, then he's going to manage us, then he's going to be an ambassador, and then he's going to be honorary president for life or something like that. And so I'm not having that, Jonny. He's going to be here for the rest of his life. But anyway, I think the only thing to stop us from talking about how great Luke O'Nien is for us to take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon.
When you think about meal kit companies, what do you see? Probably long, complicated recipes and subscriptions you can't escape. But with the new Blue Apron, we're doing meal delivery differently. No subscription needed. Faster, easier meals. And the same dedication to quality we've always had. Shop 100+ meals at blueapron.com. Get 50% off your first 2 orders with code APRON50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
And welcome back to How We're the podcast. And the first part was mainly about Luke O'Nien. So we'll get into the next topic that's being raised. And I'll start with you, Andrew, because Mike Lowry asked, was Calvert-Lewin on the pitch tonight? Can't remember seeing him. But I think that's, to raise that topic, I think that's testament, and the lads touched on it on the reaction pod straight after the game, just how well we defended, Andrew. And for a side who loves getting down the flanks and getting balls in, and I think Martin came up with a great stat that I think it was like 75 minutes and they hadn't had a touch in our box in the second half or something ridiculous like that. But, you talked about Calvert-Lewin, and actually he's the type of player you only notice when he gets the service. And I said, after one of my frustrations with the Bournemouth goal that we conceded, not just because it was handball and it should have been disallowed, but the way it panned out was quite often it happens when you allow a player to cross the ball into the box. Now, in this game against Leeds, And one thing mentioned about '09 was actually Angulo really helped him out in front of him as well. He was fantastic with his work rate. But we didn't let Leeds cross the ball into the box. You know, when they had it in open play, we charged them down, we blocked them, we stopped that space. And then if a ball did come in, Ballard and Alderete were there. So the question's about Calvert-Lewin, but I think it's more about us, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. Calvert-Lewin has had a much better season than we thought. You looked at him going to Leeds and his injury record and the fact they were newly promoted, and you thought, oh, that looks like it could be a bit of a disaster in the end. And all the jokes about, I hope they're only giving him some sort of pay-as-you-play deal because he's going to spend more time on the treatment table than he is on the pitch. But he's been okay for them. He's been reasonable. And he's obviously got quality. So, yeah, Lebris and the coaches will have looked at him, will have looked at the team, worked out the best way to handle their threat. There were more. Ending was last ditch, and we were just throwing our bodies in front of the box. I think there was a spell just before the halftime break. Jonny, you will have had a good view of this because it was at your end, where a couple of us were charging down shots. So there was that aspect of it, but a lot of the defending was keeping them at arm's length. Like you say, Chris, stopping the crosses coming in at the first place. It was our positional intelligence and organisation and knowing who needed to do what that kind of, you could have sometimes drawn like a large D shape where I would force field in front of our goal. And particularly, I dare say there'll be a question about Elborg at some point. This isn't just a lad who, and if there isn't one, I've at least given you time to quickly write a pretend one, Chris, if you want to scribble one down. This is a lad who isn't just new to England in English football. It's not like he had an absolute massive bank of experience back in Sweden. It was Sweden Sweden he's from. He was only ever a prospect there who was getting cup games for Malmo. So if I was a home fan last night and if I wasn't too busy gazing up at the beautiful lights at Elland Road and if I was actually making a bit of racket...
Was it another lights, was it? They didn't mention it?
Yes, it was briefly. They flickered on. Maybe they should call Elland Road the Stadium of Lights, seeing as they love lights. But yeah, if I was a home fan at that, I would be saying, we're going to try and test this kid. He could be nervy. He might not have a relationship with his goal, with his defenders yet. So do we want to put a couple of crosses into dangerous areas? I mean, he looked solid and he looked like the type of keeper Roofs is, but you couldn't say he was particularly out of the ordinary. So yeah, our defence was exceptional, and that is when Sunderland are at their best. When we get the plan right, we get the tactics right, and we're brilliant at soaking up pressure in those instances.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for you to have your say, Jonny, because we got another one from TJ on our defence, but he puts it in terms of, would you rather fight Ballard or Omar? But and the other thing about this is, Gav said it on the reaction pod as well. He actually put it in terms of saying that Ballard and Omar Alderete were potentially the best centre-half partnership we've ever had in his lifetime supporting Sunderland. But they have been brilliant, and they were brilliant again at Elland Road. But I think I said in the preview, and I can't remember now whether it was a preview for this game or for the Bournemouth game, they've all merged into one now. But I think it was just generally after this kind of run that we've had, it was about getting back to the things that we were really good at earlier on in the season. And part of that is that fight that, we're absolutely desperate not to concede, which I think sometimes when you let your guard down a little bit, that kind of drops, that kind of intensity level to throw yourself into things. Even if it drops slightly in the Premier League, it's noticeable. And at a game like at Elland Road, Ballard and Alderete were fantastic. And you've got to answer who you'd rather fight, by the way.
I'd rather fight Ballard because Ballard would knock us out immediately, but I think Alderete there's a chance he would just kill me on the spot. So, ideally neither, but I'll take Ballard of the two. But yeah, no, I think this ties in actually quite nicely with what you were just talking to Andrew about as well, when we talk about the defence, because obviously the tactics and the setup have to be right, as Andrew mentioned. You know, Lebris, by and large, does get those right more often than not. So that's got to be right, of course. You know, if you go in with the wrong game plan, then you're on a hiding to nothing. But thought we did have the right game plan, and Ballard and Alderete are massive for that because it's that intensity and aggression that they bring, which that's what allows us to almost have that force field that Andrew was talking about. Because you know, you look at that game, and I imagine, and I haven't looked at the stats, but I would suspect that if you tracked I think they call it action areas or something, you know, where the ball is on the pitch most of the time, I imagine there's a hell of a lot of it between both boxes and very little in either box. And part of the reason we were able to keep Leeds out of our defensive third as much as we were was because Ballard and Alderete let us squeeze forward, compress the space in the pitch, and because they're so aggressive, they will then step out and win challenges when Leeds try and play the risky ball to get in behind, or they try and do something a bit different. If you don't have Ballard and Alderete there, and you've got, I mean, you know, pick whichever names out of a hat you want, but if you've got defenders who are, you know, they could even be better on the ball or better readers of the game, but Ballard and Alderete's particular, you know, build and style and mentality allows them to push on, win those riskier duels, because they're just both so good 1v1 defending wise. You know, Alderete in the air, he has his wobbly moments now and then, as everyone does, but he's a colossus when he's on it. Ballard, I mean, we don't even need to talk about him, do we? He's just so good in the air, it's ridiculous. And they're both comfortable enough with the ball at the feet to be able to help us play out. So all of that combined, that lets us push a bit further forward. It lets us compress the space. It allows us then to press higher, because when Leeds have got less room to play in, or whoever the opposition is, because we're able to squeeze them, then the high press, there's less risk involved in that, because you know what I mean? The pitches essentially become smaller. So it all, when we get it right, all of these small things marry up together to turn us into such a difficult unit to break down on the one hand, but also a team that is able to we can then create attacks, and I think we've been getting better at that away from home as the season has gone on. I mean, certainly since the turn of the year, we were struggling massively away from home, and I think we've stepped up as we've gone. And you know, look, we only won 1-0 and it was a penalty and whatever, but yeah, Ballard and Alderete are key to laying that platform at the back to allow everything else that goes on further up the pitch to happen. A little bit like when you take Jacques out and then put him back in, so many things across the pitch for us change massively because of one thing. And Ballard and Alderete, I think, are that important for our defence. And yeah, I love them both, but if I ever fought them, one of us is going home in a box, I think.
Yeah, and with force fields, with the two of you there, I was expecting some sort of analogy with a Death Star and force fields and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, let's move on, because Andrew, the next one is about the Sunderland goal in a way. It's from Ahmad Makam, and he asks, should Enzo Lefebvre be reinstated as first choice penalty taker? He says, I say yes. But yeah, I was just fully expecting Enzo Lefebvre to step up and take the penalty. I was a little bit surprised it was Diarra, and then even more surprised maybe after the penalty that it was Diarra. But what's your take on that?
Well, I actually don't think it's a problem if both of them not alternate all the time, but we're seeing now so many goalkeepers do excellent research into players and where they take their penalties. Well, the only way to counteract that is to put as much doubt as possible in their mind. So if the goalkeeper isn't sure, is it going to be Lefebvre this game or is it going to be Diarra? It helps our cause. And I don't know what you're on about, Chris. It was a perfectly hit penalty against a former Newcastle United goalkeeper, and I couldn't have hoped for it to go any better than the way it did.
I mean, you're absolutely right, because it was Darlow. If you had a choice of how that penalty would go, and almost the only better would have been for him to spill it on the post and for it to hit his head or something and go in and be an own goal after that. But
You're also forgetting the beautiful irony of it being Diarra who scores the winner when Leeds were apparently after him all summer, and then we gazumped them and took them out from under their noses, and then he's the man who puts them to the sword. So, bit of poetry there.
Well, I think according to them, half our team was in that bracket, wasn't it? But there you go. But anyway, moving.
I was
Sorry,
just going
go
to say, sorry, Chris. I was just going to say it probably worked for Jonny, because if Jonny had celebrated, he could have gone, "Oh, I thought he'd saved it." Because it did look as if he'd stopped it initially. There was that horrible split second. So yeah, it might have got him out of jail, that one.
That's a good question, though, Jonny. How did you deal with that? Did you have to do it? Oh no, or did you have to do a tut or something like that?
Stone cold face and silence. You have not seen a more emotionless man in your life, I promise. Because I knew if I let anything out, it would all come out. And yeah, and bear in mind how quickly everything happened as well. They score, VAR check, disallowed, we get the penalty, we score. It's all, it was an emotionally taxing time.
Yeah. And if you'd let some words come out like, "Oh man, why I man," or something like that, they would have went, "Oh, hang on a minute."
Yeah, and whenever I watch the football as well, my accent just gets stronger and stronger and comes out of us more. So yeah,
couple of beers, there's the accent's really strong.
Yeah, there's me called in sick for work because I've got 6 broken bones.
Right, the next one, Tom Gray. He's gone on this topic of Wilson Isidor. We've got a couple on it. So Tom Gray asks, and I'll go to you, Jonny. He says, "What's gone wrong with Isidor?" He says, "I love the bloke, but he doesn't look like the player we know." I mean, he didn't get long when he came on. I think he came on, I'm trying to see, I think he came on with about half an hour to go. Well, half an hour and then the extra time. So he probably, about an hour he was on the pitch for in the end. But what's your take on Isidor?
I think he's a victim of the way that we play to a large degree. I don't think he suits our current setup and system basically at all, particularly through the middle. When it's Brobby, he obviously brings, Brobby's physicality is immense. He's such a good hold-up player. He's a brilliant back-to-goal striker. He can spin and get in behind as well. But he's a classic lone striker, is Brobby. And I think Mayenda isn't the same profile as Brobby is, but I think he's shown enough for us that he can bring more of an all-round game as a number 9. I think and certainly against Bournemouth, I thought he was showing flashes of it really starting to connect, where he was able to interlink with people, and he was, showing some good awareness of how to get his body in between a defender and the ball and stuff, and these kind of things that help you to play that lone striker role. Isidor just doesn't have that in his locker. And he's not a particularly young man anymore in football terms. So is he ever going to be that guy? I don't think so. In another system, I think he'd absolutely thrive, because we've seen that he's got pace to burn. He's a good finisher. He's okay with the ball at his feet. Not on the same level as Mayenda probably, but he's no slouch. So he could score goals for us in a different system. He could score goals for other teams at this level. But yeah, it's almost just he's unlucky to a degree that the system that we found that's been working for us is not a system that suits Wilson Isidor. The only criticism I would offer is I think against Leeds was the first time that I have actually started to think, you could be putting yourself about a bit more here. Because when you are only getting such little stints on the pitch, I appreciate it must be difficult for his confidence and difficult, mentally to get yourself into a game when you know that it's really the game has been and gone by the time you're on the pitch. With that said, when you've only got 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is to do anything, bust a gut in everything you do should be order of the day number 1. Yeah, I think a lot of the time the criticism he gets for laziness, in inverted commas, I think is really unfair, and I think it's just people, ironically, lazily reaching for the first criticism they can find when it's not going right for him. But I do think against Leeds there were moments where maybe Darlow had the ball or one of the defenders had the ball, and they were not under pressure, but they were turning and looking for a pass, and they didn't know what they were going to do next. And Isidor, he wasn't committing to a press. He wasn't, he was indecisive. He was, not his finest hour. But with all that said, I still love the bloke. I mean, he's scored some brilliant goals for us, and his attitude in terms of visibly loving playing for Sunderland tends to be spot on. But yeah, that was the first time that I did think, you could help yourself more here than you actually are. Even though I do think he's, like I say, a bit of a victim of circumstance, really.
Yeah, we got another one on Isidor, Andrew, for you to carry on the conversation, because Gil asks, did Isidor even touch the ball? He never looks threatening when he comes on. And there's two things I wanted to mention. There was after the game with the celebrations, which I thought Isidor got involved in, and as Register Briss says, he looked connected with the rest of the team. And the other thing was, just in terms of the game panning out, Mayenda was living off scraps, basically. And when Isidor came on, the game didn't really change. So whoever was up front in that game was going to find it a struggle, weren't they?
They were, and I think Lebris will take that into consideration when doing his post-match analysis and reviewing, did the players do what he wanted them to do? It's understandable that we as fans maybe look at individual performances more deeply and, such and such a striker hasn't had a shot on target all game. But if his primary role in the team was to do something else, to be the first line of defence or to just help us keep the ball in the channels and give us a break, it might be that he's done what the manager wanted. Both of them, they did feed on scraps. It was just the nature of the game and the nature of the way Sunderland play. It's often the case that our best performances seasons have been very tight, very solid and secure 1-0 wins. So I would like to see a bit more from Isidor, but the one involvement that I remember in having, and when he did touch the ball, if I've got this right, he was the lad who took the shot and we got the penalty decision. Now, Isidor is, of our striking options, the one most likely to have a pop. So you might get something unexpected from him every now and again. In this instance, it wasn't a case of him catching the keeper out, but he's caught the Leeds defender out and he's ended up having like a double movement and handling. I take the point that he seemed to be up with the celebrations. He was certainly motivated against Fulham when he came on, because again, he didn't have much of the ball, but when Lefay hit the penalty and we got it back to 2-1, he was one of the ones giving it the arms to the crowd and whipping everyone up. So I don't think he is detached from Sunderland at all. I think he still wants to do well for Sunderland and he still wants to see Sunderland do well. But he's not having his best period in the team. When he plays, he's not as his sharpest as Jonny mentioned. But as long as the team are getting the results and he's coming on and helping us towards that, I think we can live with it for the time being.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to the goalkeeper, Jonny, because we've got a couple of questions on the goalkeeper. Joe Lewins asks, do you think the new goalkeeper will be able to get to Roof's standard? He played well enough this evening, but Roof's looks like a class apart, especially his calming effect on the defence and his brilliant distribution. And Billy asks, with Roof's out, in a strange way, does this give us an excellent chance to blood the new keeper? Now, I think, as Martin said on the reaction pod, he was helped a lot by the fact that his defence meant he didn't really have many kind of, worldies to make, really. He was very comfortable in the saves he had to make. But it is good to see a new signing in, although you would rather Roos still be in there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, without a doubt. As much as Elborg did play well, and I wish him all the best, obviously, whenever he does play, because I want him to keep goals out of our net, if that's all right. I think, Roofs is undeniably a brilliant, brilliant goalkeeper. So we are poorer for being without him. But with that said, I think, you are right, and Martin was right to identify that, Elbow played well, but he also didn't have a vast amount of actions to actually perform, particularly saves. I think he was quite assured and confident from what I seemed to infer when he was gathering, you know, crosses, corners, free kicks, set pieces. He didn't seem to be particularly flustered by any of those. And I think you have already mentioned, and I think the lads said on the reaction pod, that it was strange that Leeds didn't try to target him more and just stick balls on his head and give him a really torrid time. Just put Dominic Calvert-Lewin on top of him and have him treading on toes and digging elbows into his ribs and stuff, and a bit of a welcome to English football. So I was surprised he didn't get more stuff chucked at him in that way, but dealt with what he had to well. Seemed calm, like I say, which is impressive for such a young player and on a Premier League debut under the lights at Elland Road, which we've got to get in. So yeah, he handled it all well. The context of the game was difficult for a young player to go in and make a debut in that kind of environment, and he handled it well, but he's got a lot to prove. It reminds me of when Simon Moore came in for a few games in the Championship and kept a couple of clean sheets, and everyone suddenly it was, oh well, maybe Patterson will struggle to get back into the team, and it was like, yeah, lads, he's caught a few crosses. He hasn't saved anything. He hasn't been under any pressure yet. Let's just hold off on the judgments until we see him properly put to the test. So a little bit of caution, I think, with Elborg. Let's see him, first of all, let's see him at the Stadium of Light. And second of all, let's see him against, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool, like Roofs has had to play against multiple times this season and keep some very important clean sheets. Let's see that before we suddenly start wondering if he can get to Roofs' level, because, yeah, there's a fair way to go yet, but promising early signs without a doubt.
And by the way, I don't think the lads mentioned it on the reaction, but I was thinking on 15 minutes, oh no, when Elbow went down holding his hamstring or his knee or whatever it was. And because you mentioned Simon Moore there, and I was thinking we're going to see Moore in the Premier League here. And then I don't know who's going to be on the bench after that. Hopefully we're going to be looking about
recalling Dan Cameron on Matty Young.
Yeah. But thankfully, he went through the rest of the game. But it might be one to watch over the next coming days, actually, to see maybe how he reacts to that. But moving away from the Leeds United game, we do have a question from Jack Asprey, who says about the weekend. He does say, we're pretty much down to the bare bones right now. So who do you think starts on Saturday for the Port Vale game? We don't really have enough players to make wholesale changes. And I do promise, Jack, we'll be previewing that game lots towards the weekend. So we will answer that question in detail towards the weekend. We're moving on to actually kind of really where the win gets us, because there's a few questions on kind of what happens next. John Harrison, he asks Andrew, he says, with no relegation fears, how much of an advantage does that give the club in planning for next season? It can give us such a head start in terms of recruitment and sounding out players, which is a good point, isn't it?
That's fair. And Sunderland have been really good over the last few seasons with regards doing things early and getting plans in place and having options. I hope this doesn't sound smug. I've genuinely felt for a while now that we'll be fine. So getting to 40 points, yeah, it's a nice little landmark. But to me, nothing changes. I think we can still have an eye on finishing this season strongly and behind the scenes get our recruitment in place. I don't think the players will see hitting 40 is anything other than just yeah, well done lads, but let's keep it going. I really hope that there's no on the beat type comments in coming weeks. But yeah, it's fair. Behind the scenes, the club are doing things right. I mean, we've already seen little hints at that. Ballard signed a new contract, which is excellent news. I joked earlier about the Pervader tribute, the special podcast we're going to do about him. But word is that he was on fairly substantial wages. So to move him on and get that money ready and potentially be put towards somebody who might be more used to us in the Premier League. That's a good thing, and we're in a healthy place. Just touching quickly on the injuries, and yeah, we're having a shocking time in terms of injuries, and to start a game without Roofs or Xhaka and still win is just testament to the recruitment and this squad we've built. And if we can take similar steps forward in terms of recruitment, I mean, how many points was it we finished behind Leeds last year? I should know because they drummed that into us as much.
Yeah, 24, 24, don't you know?
Well, there you go, 24. So that was their other one. It was 24 points more than us and under the lights at Elland Road. That was the two bingo cards you wanted for Leeds United. Well, we've overtaken them now to the point where we must be 9 points ahead of them. And we can go there without 4 or 5 of our most influential. I mean, Roofs, Mukiele, Xhaka and Broby. There's an argument to say they've been our 4 best players, perhaps. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a few others in there. But to lose that standard of player and still go there and win, we've put together a tasty little squad. And if we continue along those lines in the summer, there's real possibilities for us.
Yeah, and just a tiny addendum to that as well. It's not just to go there and win with so many players out, which obviously is true. It's also the fact that we've already played them at home, failed to beat them, and that game we also missed loads of players because it was AFCON. So both times we've played them, we've been hamstrung with player availability. And the quote-unquote harder of the 2 games, the away game, that's the fact that it's the later one that we go and win, I think is a good sign psychologically that we're not just like, oh, well, we've beaten them before, so we know we can do it. It's, no, actually, fuck it. Like, we can go there and we can get a result despite everything else. So, yeah, it's just great stuff in it.
Yeah. And just very specifically about the strengthening, Jonny, Joe Lewins asks, do we just let Traore and Sirkin go in the summer? They are both injury prone.
Sirkin, for me, is a massive no in that one. I'd be giving him a new contract. I think he's shown that he's up to Premier League standard, at least, you know, whether he's got a full 38-game season of the same level in him. Obviously, he's yet to be discovered, but he's quite clearly talented enough to play Premier League football. Started against Man City at home and kept a clean sheet. So, you know, he had Ryan Cherky in his back pocket, which fullbacks worth a lot more money than him have failed to do this season. So I'd be keeping him. And also, you know, Masuaku's gone. What a big miss. But it does mean that, obviously, as it stands, Sirkin is second choice left back. So if he goes, you've got to replace him. And I think you'd struggle to bring somebody of a comparable profile in terms of age and potential and proven ability. You'd struggle to bring somebody in for less than 20 million, maybe more. Unless you get an absolute gem with your scouting, which we could also do, which is, you know, let's be fair, but I'd keep him. Traore, 6 and 2 threes, really. I think if we keep him, we've got a player in the door who's presumably not on massive money, has already been here, knows the players in the squad and the staff, and we know he can contribute, so that's all right. If we lose him, I don't think it's going to take the same level of outlay to replace a Traore-shaped hole in this squad as it would to replace a Sirkin-shaped one. So I'm easy. I like Traore. I think, you know, if he stays, then happy days. But yeah, if he goes, I don't think we'll be scrabbling for 3 months and waiting till deadline day to replace him. Put it that way.
Yeah, that's it. Well, the very last point, it's raised by Ryan Evans, and Andrew, he asks, now we have 40 points, should we start looking at how we improve the squad? Now, that's a massive, you know, question with, you know, huge range of possibilities that we'll no doubt get into between now and the end of the season. But more to the point, I just want to rewind a little bit to the Q&A that we did last week and the difference that 2 results have made, Andrew, and that the whole tone of us talking about Sunderland has completely changed in 2 results. People were asking questions last week that were, you know, questioning the manager, questioning what we were doing, how we were playing, how we were setting up. You know, a draw, 4 points away from home in 2 games, and the tone completely changes to, now we've got 40 points. Let's look forward to this. And we've got a fifth round FA Cup tie against Port Vale. Space of a week, it's all rosy again, isn't it?
It is, and you said earlier when we were chatting beforehand, everyone was buzzing. We're all in like good moods on the back of these two performances. I think, to be fair, the majority of the responses after Fulham was from people saying, just calm it down, don't worry. Yeah, there was a bit of concern and people were maybe, is it catastrophizing, where after one defeat you suddenly now then say, oh, well, that's it, the club's going to be wound up within 6 months, we're going to go bust. I think there was a touch of that, but most people were saying, well, listen, let's just take a breath, let's just steady ourselves. It's not like in the Championship where you've got a game every 3 minutes, it seems. So we probably had a good week on the training ground and the players just took stock and reminded themselves of what we've done. And yeah, we've come back with 2 great results, 2 great performances, but nobody's particularly shocked. No, Sunderland fans aren't going, I didn't see that coming. And importantly, I'm not hearing anybody externally saying, oh, bloody hell, Sunderland have shocked me. We've had a bit joke on about the Leeds United fan TV, but I think there were a couple of comments talking about Sunderland and just how in general they've had a good season. I always listen back to games on BBC Sounds. On there was a neutral commentary. It was, do you remember Michael Brown? Used to play for Spurs, I think.
And Leeds and Sheffield United?
Yes, yeah, Leeds, Sheffield United. I think he might even be a Hartlepool lad, if I've...
I thought he was a broad Yorkshire fella.
Well, he could be. Better still, if he is a Yorkshire fella with ex-Leeds connections, because he was very positive about Sunderland, not just in the game, but in general. There was no sense from him that, like, oh, this is a club who've scraped through this season and they've fluked their way into a position. He was really positive about how we've done things. And I've heard Leeds fans say it was a smash and grab and that we parked the bus and all of this. That's not how I saw it. I thought we were just controlled. We did what we needed to do. And that ties in with what the majority of neutrals are saying. So, yeah, the Fulham game was tough to take. Nobody enjoyed it, but we're already seeing that it was perhaps a one-off, and we're now getting back to the general feel-good factor we've had all season. And like I said at the top of the pod, I'm loving it. I can't wait. I love that performance against Leeds, and I'm really, really excited for the weekend's cup game.
There you go. So I don't think I could think of a better place to end it on. So just leaves me to say thank you very much, gentlemen, and thanks again, everyone, for listening. We've got loads coming up, of course. We've got the 5th round of the FA Cup. Hopefully we'll be talking around potential quarterfinal of an FA Cup, which we haven't seen for quite some time. And then we've got, of course, building up to the Mags game in around 3 weeks' time on the 22nd. And we've got Brighton at home in between that. So look, we've got loads more on the Roker Report website. And of course, our podcasts come out every single day, and we'll carry on with the build up to this weekend. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.